the Nintendo Gamecube. A lot of power shoved into a little box, but that's actually not for me to talk about this time. So we're going to be touching on what some people managed to pull off on a little Nintendo Cube with an ATI Radeon shoved in there somewhere. So, given this isn't my video, I don't have a lot of time to talk, which doesn't really bode well for me, so let's get right into things and hopefully try to be as interesting as possible with some of the areas I'd find most interesting about the Nintendo Gamecube. One of my first areas is going to have to be the Zelda collection, which is actually a collection of in-house emulators released by Nintendo, emulating the Nintendo 64. Yep, that's right, they managed to pull that off on the moderate specs of the Nintendo Gamecube. So very impressive stuff. They also featured better quality output than the original N64 console. However, for an officially released Nintendo product, well, these releases were far from bug-free. See, all of the titles offer a rumble feature, which can cause crashes due to how poorly it was implemented. The emulation can sometimes have major hitches and freezes between loading the inventory, as the ROM access times are hard to match compared to the original console, which, you know, kinda didn't use discs, it used cartridges. And best of all, there are their fair share of frame rate issues in places, usually hovering around the original 20 FPS, but dropping below this mark far more often than the original N64 ever did. This can actually be explained in Majora's Mask, which utilised the N64 expansion pack, which of course allows for more dense games, more graphical effects, and you know, just better games all around. Now, I'm not going to go into the intricacies of how there are various remnants of different emulators found on the disc, but that's about as much as I can cram into this segment. But still fascinating they managed to even pull it off, as it's not perfect, but it's actually how I played the original two titles, and it's interesting to know that Nintendo couldn't even master an N64 emulator on their own console, which kinda speaks about how difficult it was to pull off. But then again, I can't spend all my time talking about emulators, as much as I would really like to, but you have plenty of other brilliant titles like Wind Waker, which is easily one of the best aging games of the era with its cel-shaded graphics, a large world, and it's one of the titles I can just pick up and play. It's got a beautiful soundtrack, brilliant gameplay, and yes, it was a bit of a shock at the time and a deviation away from the standard Zelda affair, but personally a top-notch game all round. Oh, and another fun fact, nearly a fully unfinished build can be extracted out of that Zelda collection I mentioned earlier, so essentially you got the full game for free if you could extract it, but we don't have time to dwell on that as much as I would really like to talk about how interesting that one disc is. Still, deviating away from Zelda, it's worth noting that the Gamecube did get its fair share of interesting releases like Metal Gear Solid's The Twin Snakes, which is a complete remake, or retelling, however you want to say it, of the original PlayStation 1 title that exists solely for the Nintendo Gamecube, and runs at a near solid 60 FPS mode at the time. It's all built upon the more modern Metal Gear Solid 2 engine that taxed the entire generation of consoles really, each in different areas. Still, it's impressive what they managed to do. The game looks brilliant, plays pretty well. It's a little bit controversial in the Metal Gear series, even if it is a more unique take, and is relegated to being a more obscure release, but still one of my more preferred GameCube titles. And then you have the big moment. The best running game ever released on the Nintendo Gamecube. One that really takes your breath away. With the FIFA series, that's right, you've got plenty of multi-platform fun that exists. I don't know much else to say. It runs alright. You've also got other areas like more Zelda titles. I'm pretty much telling you why I have a GameCube at this point, which do look absolutely brilliant, and I'd argue a lot of those era of games do actually rival the original Xbox in terms of visuals, which is really something considering the power tucked in that box. Even then, most titles do end up being limited by read and write speed because of those tiny mini DVD-esque discs. But anyway, that's enough of me talking, you get the idea. Most games run really well on the GameCube. It's surprising how many of the first-party titles actually run well, which is, you know, interesting to see. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. I've been going far too long. Let's throw this back to Owen.